Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Center for the Study of Ethics here at UVU, we'd like to welcome you to our 32nd annual Ethics Awareness Week. My name is Brian Birch, and I'm the director of the Center for the Study of Ethics here at UVU. And I have the privilege of working with some great colleagues and friends in hosting this event that we do each September. And the first thing I want to do is to thank everyone involved in the events of this week, from the staff of the Ethics Center to my colleagues on the Faculty Advisory Board and others who have helped out. It's just been remarkable to see the kind of support we get each year. Our theme, as you know, is on issues surrounding artificial intelligence. We have 13 sessions that we're hosting this week on a range of different issues and applied to different sectors in society. So we hope you'll be able to join either in person or on the live stream. So we're streaming all of the sessions. We're also recording them all. And the attendance is going to be kind of intermittent because of some challenges we had with publicizing events on campus in the aftermath of the Charlie Kirk shooting. So we've got classes that we'll be tuning in online throughout the week, and we welcome them, and we hope they can actively participate in the discussion. A couple of housekeeping items. The first one is that if you're a student who is attending this session for credit, we have QR codes on papers throughout the room. Just go ahead and scan into that, and it'll give you a little question or two identifying which class you're in. And for those of you who want to know the complete schedule, there's another QR code poster on the wall scattered around the room that you can just scan in, and that will take you directly to the website with our full schedule. So without further ado, I'll turn the time over to Ann Arndt to introduce our first session.
Excellent. Well, we wanted to start out the day actually having some conversation about applied AI, generative AI, all things AI, and address actually both the positive and the negative, the strengths and the weaknesses. So this one is actually on the hype, the hope, and the hard truths of applied AI in our daily lives. And so I also want to look at just how it's impacting not just particular fields, but us as individuals every single day, especially with the lens of what it might be doing ethically. So the summary that we had given is applied AI impact enthusiasts and skeptics answer questions and open discussion on its role in everyday human life, both now and in our immediate future, a time horizon of 1 to 5 years in areas of work, communication, healthcare, education, and other areas as well. We have 4 speakers with us coming from a variety of areas of industry. I'm going to have them be introducing themselves, but it will be Jared Stein, James, or known as JD Conway, Jack Trout, and Jepson Taylor. My name is Ann Arndt. I'm the Associate Dean for Student Affairs in the College of Engineering Technology. I'll be moderating the event. A primary purpose of the event is actually to have student questions. And so what we're going to be doing, I will be doing a lead question after they introduce themselves. And at that point, we're opening it up to audience questions. So we're very much leaning on you, including you online, to be writing in your questions or raising your hand with questions. And then we'll be going through the panel and trying to answer in the direction that this group takes the conversation. So with that, I'm actually going to start with Jared Stein. If you could introduce yourself.
How's that? I'm Jared Stein. I spent the first half of my career working in colleges and universities, leading teams that built and launched fully online courses, including here at UVU with Ann almost, 20 years ago? Yeah. Yep. Then I worked for a small ed tech company here in Utah called Instructure, who makes the Canvas LMS, where I ran product strategy and led a Skunkworks data science team that looked at the applications of analytics and artificial intelligence to teaching and learning. For the past 3 years, I've been advising and consulting with educational technology companies under my own brand. Okay. You can hold the microphone close. That'd be great. Okay. Is that a little better? Yep. That. Okay. Okay. I'm James Conway. Like I said, or like Ann said, I go by JD. I've been in hiring my entire career, about 18 years. And I focus really on right now. I'm the owner of Track Talent and the founder there. Actually, one of the HR professors at UVU contracts with me, and I focus on HR tech ecosystems, especially in hiring and an HRIS system, so on and so forth. So there are entire ecosystems that I do overhauls with. I'm advisor at Modem Tech right now. And in the past, I focused a lot. I've worked at HR tech companies, and I focused most of my career on focusing on the innovation of HR technology and how that applies in job hunting and in hiring itself. So.
My name is Jack Trout. I am the department chair for the School of Aviation Sciences. I've been department chair there for about a year and a half now. An associate professor at UVU. And before that, my experience has been mostly in the airline industry. I worked for an airline for 12 years or so, and then some other things. So I'm not a computer science person nor a technologist or any way. In fact, I only was told about 5 minutes ago that something that I did at a conference here at UVU about 2 months ago was evidently the genesis for this conversation, because at an unconference that the college put on about 2 months ago, they allowed people to suggest ideas for topics and conversations and those kind of things. And partly as a, I'll freely admit, kind of a gag, but also partly to open the conversation, was I put up one about AI Skeptics Anonymous. And it was there just to kind of a conversation about, what maybe possibly may be some downsides to AI and what kind of can cut through some of the hype that is going through, because all the other trainings and pedagogical improvements and everything that I've been a part of that have been dealing with AI, there hasn't been really a space for anybody to kind of raise their hand and go, yeah, but is that what we should be doing? Or is that really kind of a good thing? It's always just been kind of 100%, this is AI, this is what we need to do, and it's going to be fantastic. So I freely admit I didn't expect that it would kind of go to a panel discussion like this. Like I said, I'd only was told this about 5 minutes ago, that was kind of a stepping stone to have this panel discussion. So looking forward to hearing the other panelists and hear their thoughts. So thanks.
Jepson Taylor, backgrounds, chemical engineering, biomedical emphasis. My entire career has been spent building algorithms through different industries. Semiconductor, I worked as a quant at a high performance computing hedge fund. I was a chief data scientist for HireVue, where I managed a team of PhD physicists. We delivered 14 patents, and we worked on algorithms that could debias, because humans have unconscious bias. Presented that work to the EEOC, removing sexism, racism, ageism from the machine learning process. I built a deep learning company called Zeph, sold that to DataRobot, worked as the chief AI strategist for Dataiku and DataRobot. Those are two large global AI unicorns. And then currently I'm focused, I have a new company, and we're chasing engineered intelligence. So building systems that can build superhuman code reliably. So, and then I do a lot of speaking. So I'll be in Dubai in a couple weeks. I've traveled the world. It'll be my 16th trip there. So I enjoy that as well.
Wonderful. I'd like to thank each panelist for taking their time out of their work days to come and actually do this presentation with us. I'm going to actually start the conversation with a lead question. And that question, we're going to start with Jared and work our way over. We're going to have each person answer. In your view, what are the top hype, hope, and hard truths of applied AI in our everyday lives?
Hype, hope, and hard truths. In that order, Anne?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know.
Whichever order you
I
want.
think hope is the easier one. We hope that AI will solve a lot of the problems that we hitherto have not been able to solve on our own. And there's, good evidence of that in certain fields already. I think the hype is that, AI will solve all of our problems and do so equally well across domains, and that probably a lot of hype around the current value of it versus the near term or even far flung value of it to individuals and to society. Hard truth? I don't know what the hard truth is. I'm going to defer that to the other panelists.
Well, I'm excited to be invited to discuss this topic because I don't know if anybody's noticed what's happening in the labor market right now, but it's fairly wild west at this point. The reason why I mentioned that, hence the focus on hype on hiring for me. Companies are very excited, of course, to invest in AI, and for good reason. My concern and my skepticism is how quickly they slap on an AI logo and ship it and package it and send it out the door. And when it comes to HR technology, it's clear that a lot of companies, I think, jump the gun a little bit prematurely. You can see evidence of this even as early as some of the machine learning hiring scenarios that Amazon had back in the day, and they actually took it away. Does anybody know about this? By just show of hands, anybody know about what happened with Amazon's? Just don't want to be redundant for anybody. Okay, you're aware of that? Yeah. So they found that it actually had biases. So this is why it's very encouraging that Jepson's here, because they found out that Amazon's hiring software that they were building internally had a bias against women because the machine learning there had biases themselves, or it was feeding resumes and of excellent candidates, and turns out it was punishing people who had women's chess club champion or things like that. And so they took it away, but they got really excited for that. We've come a long way since then, but there are still companies that are really jumping the gun in this area. So there's a lot of hype around, a lot of excitement because it can lift real work burdens. I'm very excited about the amount of clerical work that won't need to be done by humankind in the future, right? And research and everything like that. There are a lot of problems that some people are not really discussing, and I don't know if anyone is aware. Just so I kind of understand the audience, is anyone aware of the lawsuit against Workday right now? Okay. Workday, for those of you who don't know, Workday this summer had a class action lawsuit go through essentially because it turns out their applicant tracking system that was embedded with them, which is one of the reasons why they bought Paradox AI since then, or in that interim, turns out their eye matching system, especially for internal mobility and everything like that, was actually, turns out, had ageism bias in there automatically, and they were able to prove that. So if you were over 40, the system kind of sloughed you out. So this is one of the complex problems that we're trying to solve, and I think people are just jumping after the solution because there is a lot of money in it. I think I read recently that NVIDIA itself, the company, the worth of it is greater than the entire UK stock market. And so you look at the amount of money and investment and excitement for the future and what it can bring. And I question where we're applying it, how we're applying it, and how careful we are in its application. It's very exciting. It lifts a lot of burdens. In fact, I'm, concerned about a lot of people going into talent acquisition right now, or in HR right now, because there's going to be a lot less jobs than there has been in the past. However, it's very exciting that things can be done much faster and it could solve a lot of problems. So there's a little bit of the hype and the hope, and then when we really talk about the hard truth, I think that's all packaged in what I'm trying to get to right now. It's the hard truth is it hasn't arrived yet. There are a lot of things we still need to test out and winnow out to figure out what is the right solution, what is the right way to apply it in very complex scenarios where we have human bias, and how do we make sure at this point we have students, I'm sure today, and everyone else here is looking at the job market. They're trying to use AI tools actually to apply to jobs in mass. And I just saw one a product the other day that said, look, apply to all of these places all at once. And I see some skepticism in the faces in the audience. You see where I'm going with this. On that product, this kid was applying to a nurse practitioner job and a manufacturing job. And I'm like, I'm 90% sure that you're not qualified for both of those. But, and that's some of the issues there on the job seeker side. A lot of companies are just trying to ship something, send it out to the masses, and it's causing a lot of chaos. This happened as early as when we were hiring a lot of data scientists when I was working at Bamboo HR, we had people that also jumped into machine learning. This is about 2021. And I think they were trying to show off a little bit of what they were able to do, but they applied to our applicant tracking system 8,000 times. And did they get the job? Oh, no. It's like, I don't know whether you were trying to show off or what it was, but there's just a lot of confusion and chaos. And I think in the future, there will be legislation for these things, because that often happens, whether that's on the state level, municipal level, or national level. I think legislation is going to come. However, right now it's a little chaotic, and I think my concern is that those who govern, and we can see this, what happened. I think it was Senator Hatch in the Senate when he was questioning Mark Zuckerberg and didn't know how Facebook worked. I'm a little leery about the next 5 years, just because of how loose things are and how valid things are. So there's a lot of validation coming with products, a lot of new products that are going to have their own machine learning and algorithms working out or not. And then on the employer side, just so everyone is aware, on the employer side, they love not having a massive talent acquisition or recruiting team. However, I think the hard truth is that their systems are not working the way they think they do, and their systems are a little bit more bulky and chaotic, and not as helpful as they think they are. They're screening out resumes that are legitimate resumes because they have iconography on them or something like that, or icons on them. So right now, both the hiring systems and the job seekers are kind of in this weird battle or detente, whatever you want to say, and it's causing a lot of confusion. So I'm seeing some recognition in some faces. For those of you who have done a job hunt recently, I'm sorry in advance. And if there is anything I could do to help out afterwards, please let me know.
Okay. I think for me personally, again, as I guess the kind of designated skeptic for the panel, is just from what I'm seeing, the hype is that AI can pretty much do everything for you. You may have seen some advertisements where it can tell you what the best time is to have your barbecue. It can help you decorate your college dorm room. It can do just so many different things. Like I said before, a lot of the pedagogical trainings and things that I've been attending to, not only here at UVU, but in some of the other conferences I've been, it can, as far as an instructor, it can write letters of recommendation for you. It can help you write assignments and those kind of things. Conversely, on the student side, it can write your assignments or help you write your assignments, either way. So the hype for me, at least as far as kind of my own perspective, is that AI is kind of being branded as this all-encompassing thing that, while can make your life better, there's just some questions that at least I have as far as that. So my hope is that AI, while yes, there will be certainly changes that AI brings about, as James just mentioned, that it's more along the lines of, I feel like, the same discussions that probably happened when pocket calculators came on board, or when the internet first came of age, where there is this turmoil, there is these changing things, but at the same time, it's not going to quite come about that everybody's just going to, it's not going to become kind of the WALL-E, the movie WALL-E of the future, where no one kind of has to think or do anything. It's all done by AI or robots or anything like that. So that's kind of my hope, along with kind of making sure that people still can, not just trust AI for everything, that people still think creatively, are still able to do kind of have conversations with other people, intelligent, intellectual conversations, and really keep learning and doing things. Again, it'll be interesting to see. I think the hard truth for me is that it's already clear that it can't replace a lot of things. I was having a discussion with someone else at the beginning of the year, and we were talking about AI and what it can do, and the person I was talking with mentioned a story about one instructor ran an assignment in their class where the students were basically asked to use AI to summarize books and then take a reading quiz based on those summarizations. So, it was having students use AI in hopefully a meaningful and practical way. And I stood there, thought for a second. I said, for some subjects, that would be a fantastic thing. I can see that. That would be potentially a good thing. However, I proposed the question to him, and I'll just propose it to everybody else in the room, just kind of from my background as kind of being in the aviation side. I posed to this person that's like, okay, would you get on a plane with a pilot that had used AI to summarize the book on how to fly that plane? And the person that I was standing across from immediately kind of went a little bit pale and kind of looked me in the eye and said, no, I would not do that. I would not get on a plane with a pilot that had used AI to summarize the book on how to fly that plane. So there are some hard truths already that AI is not going to absolutely be the end all be all for everything. So.
So on the hype side, I think it's had an embarrassing journey over the last decade or so. A lot of the examples that were brought up, the Amazon sexism, Microsoft had racism in some of their models. Like there's a long list of these things, and people have moved quickly. They have had to borrow a lot of lessons from industrial engineering. For all of those bad examples, no one thought about what could have gone wrong. They had to react. And I think that's a theme, is being more proactive on potential problems. I think the hope is, I think we all won the lottery on when to be alive. A lot of impossible technologies are going to be coming online very quickly. We've all seen the movie Iron Man with Jarvis, this impossible technology that would never come. And I would argue in the next 2 to 5 years, we will all have a Jarvis. We'll have our personal Jarvis that we talk to every day. And the idea of coding or typing will be kind of foreign to us. The hard truth, maybe before I switch to the hard truth, so the hope, if you think about innovation, so how does innovation work? A human has an idea, they test the idea, and that idea has value. And we benefit from that. So innovation, you can apply that to any domain: cancer research, cold fusion, space travel, physics, algorithms. And if you think about it, it's just a search space. And humans are limited by our ideas, and this will roll into the hard truths. So the hard truths is a human on their own cannot compete against these systems. And it's becoming to the point that it feels we almost have to regress the human back to the caveman state. So a human cannot consume as much knowledge. No one disagrees typically. These LLMs will read every book, they'll read every algorithm. We don't have resources and time to do that. And even if we did, we can't remember it all. A human can't produce as many ideas. And maybe the hesitation there would be, well, the ideas aren't high quality. A human will produce higher quality ideas. And we see that that's not really the case anymore. Because with humans, we celebrate the concept of a polymath, someone who's gone across many industries, and AI is the ultimate polymath. It knows all industries to much more depth, and so it can produce a lot more ideas. And then the third pillar on why humans can't compete, the time to validate an idea takes too long. And for most of us, anyone who's done research in graduate school, we make mistakes. I've definitely had points in my career where you're so excited, you have a eureka moment, you can't believe you found something, and then in a few weeks you realize that you did not find something. There's a mistake. And these systems can validate ideas almost in real time. And then the fourth thing that I think is really interesting, humans are trapped by our experiential bias. So even when you have a creative idea, you can't think outside of your own experience. It is physically impossible for the human brain to have an alien idea. And we see examples where these systems can have alien ideas. So I think the final hard truth I'll add is no one cares about what you know as an individual. We used to look up to that. Think about someone very wise. We're moving into a future where the smartest person in the village could be outperformed by the village idiot with an AI system. And so in this new world, it's all about what you can do with AI. And going back to that example that you brought up, I completely agree with the example. You should be nervous with a human flying a plane where AI has summarized the entire book, but you should actually be even more encouraged with a human flying a plane if they are paired with an AI system in any moment in time can answer questions from everything about the plane to assist them. So it's kind of this dual pairing. So so I'll end with that.
Okay, I have some questions up here, but before I ask those, I want to reach out to the audience. So do we have audience questions that you'd like to ask the panel in total or any individual panel members?
Yeah, thank you all very much. This is guided more towards Jepsen. So even people that have been building this stuff for a long time, like Jan LeCun in particular, advocate of this technology even down to the 80s. A lot of technology that he built in the 80s, some of the technology that's building up to the generative hype that we're seeing now. He's been pretty clear about his statement that he thinks that LLMs are an off-ramp to better technology in the long term. And just to your claim that this is a computational, these machines can consume more information than humans, he makes the counterclaim that in 4 years, a child had seen 50 times more data than the biggest LLMs, particularly because the amount of information that we receive from all the sensors we have in our body is a much higher bandwidth than anything a machine can do. So I guess in that sense, what do you think about Jan LeCun's proposition? And the second one is, I want to ask about the material consequences of building this much AI this quickly, particularly the computation, the data centers, the power usage, et cetera, et cetera. So what does it mean for us to all have our Jarvis at a time where we're dealing with energy crises, water crises, et cetera?
And for people that aren't familiar, so LeCun is a huge name in the AI space. He's considered one of the godfathers. And there's a very famous Nature paper covering deep learning. There, he's associated with ushering in deep learning, which was a precursor for the LLM, and that was a precursor for agents. So I disagree with LeCun's perspective. He's been very negative about the LLM. He's been looking at all these alternatives, and he's said things very intentionally where he said essentially that they can do no more than a mixing of the past. They can't innovate, they can't push the envelope. And I think with agents we see evidence that that's not true. And so my opinion is we have everything we need to go all the way to AGI, to infinite technologies. We have the precursors. We are not blocked on some major breakthrough. These systems are smart enough that they can begin building what's next. But to your point, this is a big concern in the industry that the Jensen and Sam Altman were being interviewed, I think a couple of weeks ago, about the $100 billion investment. And they were quoting some numbers that sound nonsensical, that the appetite for reasoning and AI consumption, they might even set a number as high as $1 billion. So we might discuss it's going to increase 10x, 100x. And they're talking about increasing an infinite amount. And that's a problem. That's a problem. The impact that humans have on the world, the impact of all the resources. And so this doesn't make you sleep well at night, but some people think, well, we just have to build it really, really fast, and then it'll be smart enough to fix our problems. If we have a smart enough AI system, it can actually help us do terraforming. It'll help us correct what we did, or it'll help fix poverty. And I think one last thing I'll bring up is something that terrifies me is the inequality gap. So I was in Morocco giving a talk there. We can all use ChatGPT because we can afford it. They cannot. And so as our educational systems begin to go vertical, you'll have all these third world countries where that is not true. And so what happens to them when agriculture is automated, when all these things are automated, all those people are out of business? Was there any other part of your question that I didn't answer? So LeCun, I disagree because I think we have components that can run to the end. And then you're bringing up the ultimate question: is it going to be too much, too soon, too fast? And are we going to pay the ultimate price?
I have so many more questions.
No. And we can talk more after too.
Did anybody else have comments on this question before I go back to the audience? We're good? Okay, other audience questions?
So how bad are the biases that AI has, and how do we fix them?
Any panelist may choose to answer that question.
I think for me, I couldn't answer anything about the biases around the globe and in different contexts, but um, I can say there are ways to engineer against these biases and plug the gap and fill it. And this is why I was very encouraged that Jepson's here as well for that, because you have to be proactive with these things. You have to see the problems in advance in order to make sure that the systems are doing what they need to be doing to have to remove a lot of these biases. And so, just again in the hiring context, um, how do you remove some of these biases? And I think there's even if you really think about it, there's a bias. Everyone has their own personal biases on what a resume should look like. That's not chaotic for job hunters, right? That's the problem, is that we're trying to get to something very specific, and we're running down the path, and we're not stopping and saying, okay, how do we get there in the best way? Maybe we should do away with resumes entirely, because now the entirety of your experience can actually be summarized and spat out by an AI system, right? And something like that. So there's a lot of different ways that I think the future can form, and I'm grateful that that panels like this can help us stop and think. And not it shouldn't hold back the excitement on what AI can do, but there's quite a lot of biases everywhere in hiring. That how do you, if all humans have bias based on their own experience, how do you expunge that? And there are ways, but we need to be really thoughtful on how to do it. And that's I think the problem I'm seeing is the rush to market is getting in the way of that. And there are a lot of companies that are just, in fact, sometimes I question if CEOs, a lot of these companies, know if they're hiring the right person, because how do they know how to vet somebody who actually knows what they're doing, right? So I know a lot of CEOs in this HR tech space, and they feel the pressure of using applied AI in their system, and they'll say AI driven, and what does it even mean, right? It's just very nebulous, all of these things. So I think this is the issue, is that because humans have such inherent biases based on our experiences, we're going to perceive people automatically. Our amygdalas do that right away. So how do you remove that, and what really matters? In fact, you can see in job ads today, I can spot ChatGPT everywhere, because they're desperate looking for shortcuts. Hiring teams are. So they'll just say, create, the best job ad for a product manager that does X, Y, and Z. And it doesn't control for the talent of the individual who doesn't have a certain educational background, or it doesn't control for other things. And so even the job advertising side has biases that will limit people's opportunities or encourage other people. And this is sometimes what I worry about with the disparity. I'm like, are we just going to have AI oligarchs across the world? Maybe that's a little bit too negative or dystopian in my thoughts, but I think that's one of my concerns is how do you solve this now in hiring to give more opportunity for people? And I don't see companies doing a very good job of reskilling their people to use applied AI. They just go, hey, these 5 people in the back corner said we don't need this entire workforce anymore, and shoved them out the door. And so from an ethical perspective, like, how can we help more people across the world use applied AI so that way we don't have such disparity? That was very long-winded for that question, but thanks for letting me jump in.
Do other panelists have feedback?
I was going to make a quick point that bias is also part of the power play between a lot of these sovereign nations. So if you go to DeepSeek, which is the Chinese AI, and you ask for it to come up with a list of criticisms of the U.S., what has the U.S. government done poorly? It'll give you fair criticisms. And if you ask it to do the same of the Chinese government, it has none. And so the biases that go into these bigger AI systems are tied to cultures and power structures, and that's definitely a concern with a lot of nations. Are they going to have this colonialization of the American way through AI systems? Ultimately, it's the data that's consumed that drives that.
Okay, next question.
Hey, my name's Chris. Thanks so much for all of your time coming here. This is really informative and insightful. I spearheaded a lot of the AI initiatives here at the Office of Teaching and Learning, and I am wondering the number one common difficulty faculty feel with AI is AI cheating, which we say AI dishonesty, but it's, more colloquially known as AI cheating. That's how we all talk about it. And we're focusing on how to balance incorporating AI into the courses while also, to enhance learning, but also making sure that we can still verify that students attain skills. And so the what I go to is telling faculty in my consultations or in our AI workshops is saying we're now being forced to move toward project-based learning, real-world scenarios, that kind of assessment types. However, that requires a lot of time to redesign their courses on the part of the faculty, which they don't have. And it's a lot more time consuming to grade 50 portfolios than it is to let Canvas, with the snap of a fingers, grade the final exam. So I think the solution might lie within like a structural reorganization of the way education systems are structured. But I was wondering, in a way that allows for that time for faculty to provide students. However, I was wondering what you guys' thoughts are on addressing this issue of verifying students' attainment of skills while also using AI to enhance learning, because it will be able to enhance learning. It already is.
Jared, I'm going to request you start.
I might try to tackle that. I think there is no easy answer. I think one of the things that's becoming increasingly clear is that the proliferation of AI is causing us to question down to the fundamental first principles, why are we doing what we're doing? And if you think about education, why are we doing what we're doing? Is it to get students jobs? Well, if that's the case, you just grant them all diplomas and they have a greater chance of getting a job. Of technology to help students get better grades? Well, if that's the case, then AI can do that for them. Is the purpose of education to develop certain skills? If so, what skills? What skills will be relevant in a world that's infused with AI that's much more powerful? Is the purpose to develop critical thinking and creativity and the ability to manage the technologies that we create and even to judge and evaluate them before they make it into the world? Yeah. And if that's the case, what we know from cognitive research is that creativity and critical thinking in particular do depend upon the development of internal understanding and knowledge, both broad and deep. So I think educators, we still have to figure out like what is the purpose of education in this new era. Once we do that, then we do have to rethink how is our system constructed, how do we teach, and how do we both motivate and enforce a kind of learning amongst our students that delivers the outcomes for them so that they're not stuck in some future where they're fully reliant upon AI technology and thereby in some ways disempowered versus those who are controlling the technology.
Other panelists?
Sure. So as far as like AI and what's it's going to be as far as classes and what are we going to do with students, I think Jared's right. Is we've got to look at what are we actually wanting our students to do and to get out of the classes. At the same time, I do feel like there's a number of things that, at least me personally, that I hope that students are coming to universities still to get varied experiences on things, to learn critically, how to think critically, how to, apply the things that they are hopefully learning. But I'm also a realist, and I know that there are students that are, at least as far as what we have right now, without making those changes pedagogically to the classes that we're doing and updating things in Canvas and updating assignments and changing things, that there are students that are taking the easy way out, to put it as bluntly as possible, maybe not too bluntly. Just an example, a couple of years ago when ChatGPT really kind of exploded, I had a student in one of my ethics classes. It was an ethics class, ironically enough, where the assignment asked the student to research a topic and then to share their own experiences about that topic. It was a fairly broad-ranging topic. And the paper that the student turned in started off great, sounded great. The research was great. And then about halfway through the paper, it said, as an AI tool, I have no personal experiences in this subject. And so, I invited the student in and said, hey, can we talk about this? Clearly you used AI because it's just right there in your paper. And the student just said, yeah, I used AI, and then just moved on. Never wanted to engage, never wanted to do anything, and basically kind of, quite honestly, phoned in the rest of the semester. I never got a chance to have that good conversation with them to say like, hey, what's going on? Can I try to re-engage with you? Can I try to bring you back into the class? I don't know. I don't know what the motivation was. So it goes back to, what was that student thinking that they were possibly going to get out of that class? Were they expecting anything to get out of that class or that particular assignment? Or was their usage of AI stepping stone, Jarvis, or was it just, I don't have enough time tonight, I just need to throw this into AI and see what pumps out, and Control C, Control V. I know that for some of the discussions that I've had within the department that we've had as far as AI and the uses of AI, one of the things that we're doing is incorporating AI, asking students to, say what prompts they used for the AI, say what tools they used for AI. So not just shoving it out into the cold, but incorporating it in while also hopefully ensuring that they are getting out what we want them to get out of that particular project or assignment or whatever it may be. I know that for one of my other classes, I have students create an advertisement. And in previous years, it's always been, well, what tool do I use? And, is it paint.net or Windows Paint or something else? And now it's, what AI tool are you using? What AI tool are you using to create these images? So I've always joked also that if it does become so bad that everything is just, the papers are coming from AI, the quizzes are being answered through AI, the pictures are being created through AI, I've joked with some of the other faculty that's like, well, I'm just going to make everything a presentation. That way, at least they have to read something, go through their mind, go out their mouth, and maybe that's at least somewhat of a better thing, but I know it's not actually what we really want students to be doing. Because even then, they're still not engaging with the material. They're still not thinking about things as far as what we would like them to think about. Like I said, that ethics class, I tell students up front at the beginning of the semester, this class is to get you to think about these issues. So if they're not even doing that, if they're just throwing something in the AI and letting the AI pump out and they just send me whatever is pumped out, they're not actually thinking about these issues that may very well have a profound impact on their careers going forward. So yeah, it is one of those things. What are we trying to get students to do, and what's the point of the assignment to get to that point?
This is one of my favorite questions. So I'm going to reference South Park. So there's an episode of South Park where all the students start using ChatGPT and their grades immediately become A's. And the English teacher's complaining because now Mr. Garrison has to do a lot more work. And his partner tells him, you can use ChatGPT. So you have the teacher using this AI system to do all the grading and the students doing that. And it's obviously it's a funny scenario, but it's an important scenario. So I think we have to completely reinvent how we score students. I'll give you two examples. So let's stay with English. So with English, if you have a student that's lazy and they use ChatGPT, a few minutes before the deadline, they send something in, that paper is going to be scored on a different bell curve. So if an AI system is scoring that paper for synthetic writing, for references, or the example you gave, which was a wonderful but terrible example, they should be severely penalized. That should really hurt their score. So teachers will be able to actually begin grading students at a professional level. What is the style? What are the strengths of the arguments? What are the references? And the volume of work will change. So the quality and the volume of work. So you will look at a scenario where a student might produce a New York Times bestseller book. And based on all criteria, it is. I would argue the basic students will not be able to do that. Now switching to engineering, today your students finish your engineering tasks. They submit code. Using Cursor, I would argue for someone competent, they could submit it during class. They could do the entire project and be done, and it'd be higher quality. You have to change how you score students. And so every piece of code your students write, we can score it today based on how close it is to optimal, meaning no more refactoring possible. I would argue students, Their code is not scored today based on security concerns, based on deployment, scalability. So what I'm saying is there is a whole mountain of professionalism that is going to be thrown onto these students, and it should be, and that was never available before because that would have been overwhelming. And so I would love to see a scenario where the teachers run a million miles with AI, and they encourage the students to as well, with severe penalties for that behavior, which I think is
I will clarify that student did get a 0 for that paper. That one particular student did get a 0. Like I said, usually in those situations, I try to engage with the student and say, hey, let's talk about this. Try to kind of have a, good discussion about it. And I already said the student just basically fessed up, said, yep, I used AI. And that's the last I heard of them. And all the papers that I graded for that student for the rest of the semester were quite abysmal, quite honestly, because I don't think they were using AI anymore, but they were also, for lack of a better term, phoning it in for the rest of the semester. So yeah, the student did get a 0 for that paper.
Jepson, let me ask you a follow-up question there, because earlier you said that the hard truth is that humans cannot compete with these systems, and that in the world where AI is this powerful, nobody cares what you know. So your comment there sort of presumes that the desired outcomes of education are still intact. Do you think that the AI world that we're about to enter into still requires the educational outcomes that we're aiming to instill in our students?
I think the educational outcomes are changing. I'll give you a specific point. So students that have this, let's say this curriculum is reinvented for English, and they are producing unbelievable bodies of work at incredible quality, because I think the role of the human is not based on the builder. You're the architect and the judge. And so a really good judge, that student, when they come into industry, I'm writing an RFP, a request for proposal, 20, 30 pages. It's technical. That would typically take me a month. And there's a lot of money at stake. The student that came out of that class, they did it in 24 hours. And they didn't just have AI do it stupidly. Like they are the judge. They were able to kind of go through and honestly, so we're trying to prepare them for that world, because what do they do in the professional setting compared to someone like, let's say I didn't do that, and then I'm stuck in this synthetic writing, references unknown.
Yeah.
Even though AI is so powerful, I will not. It's like the classical tool analogy. We're all apes, and we found a tool down by the river, and the kids that learn to use it, they'll run circles around those that are still scratching their head on. I would never dare to write an RFP with ChatGPT blindly, but these students are doing that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think that raises the question for us as educators, right, which is to what extent do we still need to rely upon what we've considered traditionally to be the desired educational outcomes versus allowing students to rely on AI? What is the right balance? It feels like a balance has to be struck, but what is that right balance, and how do we do that in such a way that we aren't allowing students to self-sacrifice the knowledge and skills that they need to be able to judge and evaluate and use these tools effectively?
Just very quickly, I think we also have a challenge of presenting the value of continued educational structures the way they are and have been. Therefore, universities, other schools need to present that value very quickly. There's never been a lower barrier to entry to be a solopreneur and make a lot of money. There's a lot of things that you can do very quickly with applied AI. So those who are jumping on it very quickly now, and I wonder if that makes students check out sometimes, that if they don't see the application of it right now, they don't see whether or not they should be focusing on using it. And to Jepson's point of being essentially the judge in that regard, I think it's very important to present that to them, because Gen Z is very pragmatic in how they see a lot of educational opportunities. There's been a lot of studies on what's happening as they're entering the workforce. And so you have to show the need for applied AI, and universities have to embrace this very swiftly and figure out the best ways to do it. And that's, I think, going to be the challenge. I think this is why a lot of online universities are springing up, have been springing up, so on and so forth, because you can take certain courses, and you could argue whether that's detrimental to society or not. I'm not the person to say that, but I will say, as it prepares people for the workforce, you have to present the value very quickly, because if not, people are just going to go, learn on their own. And some people will be left at the wayside, and some people will be able to apply it very quickly and find very lucrative opportunities. And the cool thing about this is that it's never been easier to be an entrepreneur and a solopreneur, just because I don't have to code anymore. I was experimenting with other, landing sites the other day. There's so many things that I don't have to spend hours doing. I built something in 40 minutes, and it was very fulfilling because it would otherwise take me so much longer. Gen Z is seeing that. A lot of millennials are seeing that, and so we need to adapt very quickly.
We have time probably for another question or two, and then I do want to give a few minutes for everybody to give closing comments.
Thank you so much for your presentations. I think my question is more directly for Jack, but I'd be curious to hear what everyone has to say. So when ChatGPT first was released in November 2022, I remember a lot of my colleagues were very upset, like what is this going to do for education? And I saw it more as an opportunity, but not for the reasons people usually say. So I think that the function of education is about developing intellectual curiosity, about learning to ask good questions, about caring about people, learning to relate to them, being better citizens, all of these kinds of things. And I've always felt that coercion is antithetical to that. Yet there's a lot of coercion built into our educational system. Grades, for example, have an element of coercion to them. So I felt like AI was giving me license to sort of free up the kinds of assignments that I do and to try to teach students by inspiration rather than using these other kinds of methods. So I've done things more like labor-based grading and also, just saying to students, look, I can't force you to learn anything. So you have to find that passion, and for me to try to instill that in them. But I teach philosophy, and I'm wondering if you think that is something that translates across the curriculum to departments where you're more closely tied to industry.
The motivation of the student is always critical, and it is something that, it's the age-old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. The example I just gave a little bit ago, clearly that student didn't want to engage with the subject matter of that class. But kind of to your point, as far as not just shoving it down their throats, in that particular class, one of the other things I do at the very end of the semester is they have an opportunity in their final project to pick a subject that they want to talk about. And it's as long as it's related to aviation and their careers in aviation, that's the only kind of barriers I put onto that assignment. They can talk about whatever they want to talk about, whether it's a subject that they've covered in the class or something completely different. And I've had some students go on some pretty interesting and completely unfathomable tangents that I never thought would be something that they'd think about. AI tools have the potential to kind of enable that, to bring into those questions. It's just sometimes I worry that students are, like you said, maybe being forced to do these things, so they put in the minimal amount of effort using the AIs to do that. It's just like one of the other kind of common things that I have discussions with students about is not even using AI tools, just using good old Google search and going with the first result that pops up on Google Google search, whatever the first result is, because that's the easiest path forward. And I worry that some students, at least as far as what we currently have designed in our classes, that's going to be kind of what they're going to continue to do, because whether it's from training from their, primary education, or if it's just from what they've been experiencing at UVU, that's kind of the path that they've been shown is, quite honestly, the path of least resistance. And that's just, most students, it's kind of a cooperate and graduate, some of these classes and some of these subjects, it's just, I just need to do this to get to this point, so that I can eventually get that job. And so again, it is going to take a hard look at what is the education institutions, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to, as JD said, are we trying to create, are we just trying to get people to jobs? Okay, well, my department, that is kind of half of what we're trying to do with the School of Aviation Sciences, professional pilot. A big section of our department is having students get their certifications and ratings so they become pilots. There's far less kind of variability as far as what these students are trying to do. They know what they want to do. They want to get a job as a pilot, period. So we have a lot of courses that are focused on that, and it is kind of a lot of, yeah, we're going to force you to learn these things because you need to learn these things to be a good pilot and then get your job and to, get those employers to pay attention to you. But we have other classes where I keep mentioning the ethics class, where it is just, hey, we just want to engage with these subjects and to think about them. And as we progress for the next few years, it's probably going to be something particularly for that class that I'm going to have to take a top-down approach and really rework and probably put in more things about, okay, here are some things that you need to think about. Here are some things that may impact your careers, but what do you see as the impact on your careers? Because you do have all these information sources now at your fingertips. You can go to, whatever AI tool of your choosing and just kind of ask it about ethical issues in aviation, or just go to straight Google or whatever choice of information you have. So I agree. I think it's going to take some different things. It's going to take some different, as Jepson said, some different types of grading. It's going to go beyond just the straight A, B, C, and D, okay, this paper's an A, yeah, this paper's a C, to really kind of look at what is these assignments doing. And I do think that, speaking of papers, that those will become quickly kind of dinosaurs in the education industry. I think that just having rote papers and rote research papers are going to become less of a thing. I don't think they'll ever go away, but I think they will become less of a thing because we have all these tools that will be able to help students get those kind of basic information, and it will go to a more applied sense for these assignments. Okay, we know you can go research that information fairly easy. Now, what can you do with that information? How can you apply that information you personally? Don't ask the AI tool to apply it for you. How are you going to apply it? So,
Other panelists?
I'll jump in and say, I think one of the best things about the development of AI's impact on education is that it really does force us to recognize that one of the responsibilities of educators is to inspire and motivate in our students that curiosity and that passion for learning. I think the challenge is we're up against brains that are wired to conserve energy. And for many of us in this room, right, we are naturally curious. We have learned to love learning. We have learned to feel the satisfaction of doing the work. I don't know that that's true for a lot of our students, and I think that's reflected in their current use of AI in their studies. So I think some combination of focusing on that inspiration and that motivation and providing the structures and limitations and guiding students to, use AI appropriately in certain situations, but then also recognize when it's important for themselves to do the work. I think that's going to be critical for education going forward. And I think the ramifications will be, apparent in society if we build a world where some people are able to be critical thinkers and able to manage these tools effectively, and others are basically just puppets. So I worry about that.
Other questions? I think we have time for one more.
So moving out of the classroom for a moment to kind of a broader perspective of AI development and application, I know one of the concerns is the concentration of power in the hands of very few corporations and authoritarian states. Is there any way that you see moving forward to bring AI and tech development and application under sort of democratic oversight or governance, or how to apply ethical guidelines to the development of AI and its applications? So again, the issue, I guess, would be how do we address the concentration of power in the hands of very few corporations who control the development and application of AI?
It's a very difficult problem because the amount of capital that is required to train these larger models, spending hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, and they're talking about the $1 trillion data centers coming online. And I think unfortunately because of that, that IP and technology, we do have open source equivalents that show up, but I think that is the primary concern. The true leaders will have some capitalist investment where their shareholders won't allow them to give away the full IP or the new IP. There's an excellent AI 2027. There's a very well done video that summarizes that paper, and it kind of talks about this showdown that's going to come in the next couple of years between China and OpenAI. And yeah, so unfortunately, I don't see a solution to the problem that you propose, which is a serious problem for those reasons.
Other panelists?
I think it's difficult just because governments, yeah, it'll depend on what people demand of their governments as far as this goes, and it's difficult to do that if in some nations they're not even aware of what's happening right now until they essentially enter a world that's easier for them, but they may not recognize that that there's puppet masters behind some of this. And I think there's also a unique opportunity now for us to talk to Congress people and whatnot. There's a lot of money involved. I think we need to ask these questions now with louder voices to some extent. There's a gold rush right now. It's very understandably so. But I think if we don't start bringing some of these things up now, then it will become harder and harder to solve these problems. And so I just think there needs to be a lot of proactivity. This is why I mentioned there is a time delay in some legislation that happens, at least, to put guardrails on the national scene, to put guardrails in place. And I don't think we can afford to do that for very long this time. There's a little bit in the past, Congress has taken too long to act on some things, and I'm not just trying to bash the government here. It's more about speed. And so I think the more we bring this up with even state level senators and everything like that, I think the more we get involved and bring this up as a necessity, I think it'll start to be addressed, and there'll be more precedent other places. How do we solve that with authoritarian governments who are using it on so many people and they can hide data behind it? I also wouldn't know how to solve that problem because there's I actually did a study abroad in China. My minor was political science, and I did a study abroad there, and in fact, one of the professors at the Renmin University there said that most of the people in the government, in his view, don't see what they're doing as immoral or moral. It is amoral, because if it is good for China, it is good no matter what. And so you have to, globally, I don't know how we would solve that. Yeah.
Any other speakers? No? Okay. Okay, at this point, what I would like to do is have each speaker, just whatever points you would wish to give to the students and people listening, just some key thoughts for you as a wrap-up statement. I'm going to have each of you speakers do that. Jared?
Sure. Man, it's tough to have a wrap-up statement on this. I think one of the things that we are all learning, and we should be very conscientious of, is that AI is going to bring us a ton of value, a ton of efficiency, and a ton of improvements in our individual and our social lives. All of that, though, will come at some cost, and we need to be aware of what those costs are, whether those are individually or collectively, and to be okay with those costs moving forward, because there's nothing to stop us from continuing to develop the AI. It's just not going to be feasible to put the kinds of controls that we're seeing in some other parts of the world here in the US. So I think our best hope is individually, and as we can collectively in groups, advocate for preservation of the parts of human society and human value that we want to keep, acknowledging that we will lose some things along the way, and continue to push for the values and benefits that we all want from it.
I don't think I can add too much, but my summative statement would be embrace things quickly, and look around. While there's a lot of questions to be decided down the road, do embrace this in your self-education, because there are very few other entities right now that are going to be very few. Well, I say very few companies that seem to be trying to reskill their workforce directly with it. So with applied AI, the more you can jump in right now, the better you'll be prepared to both have applied questions answered, and also help family, friends, others that you know apply for what changes will happen in the workforce. They're already calling it a white collar recession right now, and there are big changes happening in the next several years. We don't need to be afraid of it as long as we're jumping in and preparing ourselves for it. So.
Yeah, I'll agree. That's a difficult thing to wrap this up in a quick soundbite as far as everything that's going on with AI. And like I said, I guess my designated position in this panel was as the skeptic. So there's a lot of things that I know that I see out there, and a lot of things everybody else sees out there, particularly for any students that are watching out there and are kind of worried about their careers and what their future workforce will look like. And I guess for me personally, also being kind of as part of UVU here, that I would say to any students to be working with AI, and even if your classes and your professor isn't quite embracing AI as much as you think they should be, to approach your instructors and professors and to kind of say, hey, you're asking me to do this, why can't we, or could I do this other thing, and kind of do something that meets those same course learning outcomes or learning objectives, and to kind of change it up a little bit, because I would hope that most instructors would embrace that as well and go, okay, that sounds like a fantastic idea. Let's change it up a little bit. Let's look at this and kind of go something little bit different. Don't get me wrong. I do think that, at least as far as in this brackish time that we live in, that there are going to be some rough spots and some stressors, and there are going to be kind of some guardrails that are going to be put into place, at least as far as until maybe in the next couple of years that it clarifies on what this AI future will look like, kind of getting past the hype. But yeah, at the same time, I would hope that all faculty are at least taking a look at AI tools, seeing how they can incorporate it into the classrooms, and seeing how it can better prepare the students for their future, whatever that may be. Whether it is a kind of harder industry look, like some of the things in my department, or if it is kind of more, what is my career going to look like in the future, given everything that's changing, kind of like the HR space and those kind of things. If you're a student wanting to move into the HR space, yeah, there's probably some definite concerns there, as JD probably has pointed out. So I guess my final thought would be just hang on, be adaptable, and we'll all get through it together somehow.
I think I would summarize my point of view with 3 words. I really liked your mention of coercion, passion, and purpose, and I see them on a linear scale. So, in related to coercion, I heard another leader in the AI space make a statement to a large body of students saying, "I don't want to see any of your projects, any of your class projects." And when he said that out loud, I agreed with him. It's pretty blunt, but I agreed with him, and it kind of goes back to the coercion. The students, did they come up with a project? What was their involvement? There's no indicator of passion necessarily, and the employer did not want to investigate that. They're looking for extracurricular. What were your summer projects? What were your projects that you did? And I think the hope for these students is curiosity moves to passion, moves to obsession, and ultimately, which very few will obtain, is the concept of purpose. If you can find them later in the future and they can tell you that this is my purpose, this is the thing that I'm chasing right now, and this is why I'm alive, that is the ultimate gift that can happen. If passion or purpose happens with any of your students, they will be just fine. No one is concerned that they will be experts in wherever they're headed. And that, and I think going back to purpose, we think about AI pushing the envelope with innovation and technology, but humans have so much work to do on our own mental health, how we manage grief, how we, if you think about the activities in your life that fill your soul and give you joy, I would argue you don't have enough time for them. And so the hope in the future is we will all have more time to socialize, have interesting conversations with other people, leave with new ideas. And so ultimately, I think that is the hope. And then the last thing I'll leave with, this is maybe the nerd in me, is your grandkids will walk in the room and tell you that they came up with a non-carbon silicon-based life form that will survive on Saturn. Something so ridiculous that would be beyond a PhD for any of us, and that will be something that your grandkid casually did, and they thought it was interesting. They didn't build it, but in the computer, they have found something that they believe would self-replicate, and there is an infinite number of ideas that can be pursued, but we really want them to be chasing that interface. Every job right now has an expiration date. If they are on the interface of AI, there will be infinite opportunity. So if the passion's there, they will be just fine.
I would like to take now a second just to thank the panel. And again, for online, you can even clap if you're online, even if we can't hear you. But thank you very, very much to the panel. And it's been highly educational. If anybody wants to stay for questions, I have a feeling some of the speakers are willing to chat for a little bit. Thank you very much.